Elder, financial fraud keeps getting worse. Audie Apple is a financial strategist, co-founder of GuardVest, GuardVest.com, to talk about some of the latest and maybe how you can protect yourself and how you can protect, those you love and care about. Audie, good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. Good morning.
Hey, welcome to the show. Let's talk some senior scams. What are you seeing more and more of these days?
Well, unfortunately, what we're seeing more and more is people being taken advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
And really, it's one of these problems where you just see the tip of the iceberg, unfortunately, because the really effective folks out there at taking advantage of folks do it in a way that you don't realize it's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And which is one of the disturbing elements of this research, where 5% of the folks admit to being victimized, but 20% of people say they know someone else that's been victimized. Well, that tells you that it's happening more than we realize.
Yeah, and I would say there's probably a lot of pride with folks. Out of those 2,000 people that they looked at, 65 and up, the 5%, I'd say there's probably more that don't necessarily want to admit that they got taken advantage of. What do you think about that, Audie?
I'm 100% in agreement with that. Don't want to admit and are in denial not only to the outside world, but in denial to themselves, because it's a very disturbing thing to discover, frankly. Your personal financial information is one of the most private things that we have about it. It's a very private matter. And to imagine that someone that you've taken into the inside of that world with you might not have been pursuing your best interest or even taking advantage of you is a very, very difficult thing to get your arms around.
Audie Apple, financial strategist, co-founder of GuardVest, GuardVest.com, talking elder financial fraud. We're talking senior scams here. I guess, what should we be on the lookout for? Another staggering statistic, I guess, when it comes to what we should be on the lookout for and who we should be on the lookout for, found that more than half of the victims in this particular survey said a relative, friend, or caregiver was behind that abuse.
Well, there's a couple of things folks can do to protect themselves. I mean, number one, always get a second opinion. A friend, a family member, someone else outside of that conversation that you can trust completely. That's number one. Another investment advisor is a possibility for another opinion. So that's the most critical element. Another alternative to protect yourself is really why we founded GuardVest. When someone's making a recommendation for how you'd invest your capital, track that information for a while. Track that recommendation for a while. That's what we built GuardVest up for, so that investors can sort of test drive the car before they buy. And, you got to do both of those things. And I'm quite certain that the incidence of this behavior would go way, way down.
Can you explain a little bit how that works? Because at GuardVest, I'm not too familiar with it, but as you describe it, it sounds like a great idea. Exactly how would somebody do that?
Well, I mean, we built the site. It's GuardVest.com, and someone can take a recommendation they get from an investment advisor and either put it in themselves or have the advisor put it in for them, so that they can track it and watch it alongside, if they like, what they currently hold and see how it compares. And what the tool does, it x-rays those holdings and identifies all of the expenses and fees associated with those investments. And so the investor is able to enter into that decision with the comfort of knowing they've done thorough due diligence. They, in fact, know everything they should know, and they're going to make a better decision.
We see this so often, even the movie that we just saw in the last year or so, Wolf of Wall Street, where folks are preying upon individuals when it comes to financial scams like this. They're so prevalent. There's so many out there. At the same time, you don't want people to completely get so trigger shy that they never invest or they never take that. You don't want them to take the money and hide it under their mattress, do you, Audie?
No, certainly not. I mean, you don't want to do that, but you want to be sure that you understand what you're paying and what you're getting for it. And, again, test drive the car before you buy it. One of the things that I think makes this resonate with folks is that when you really stop and think about it, nobody really knows what they're paying for investment advice. It's the only thing I can think of that people buy, and they don't know what they paid for it. And, we're out to solve that. So at least understand what the costs are associated with those decisions and make an informed decision. And once again, when you engage the tools in to also get a competing recommendation, perhaps from another advisor, I'll tell you, there's a behavioral phenomenon. There's been a lot of research called the sentinel effect. When you ever been driving down the street and you see the police car kind of parked over there on the side and you go, oh, I better slow down, right? And you get up there and the cop car was empty, right? There's nobody in the car. Well, that's called the sentinel. You thought you were being watched, so you behave better. Well, effectively, that's what GuardVest does for investors, right? We've noticed already when investors engage investment advisors through GuardVest and use that lens to look at their recommendation, you know what? Those fees come in usually about half what the prevailing fees are in the industry. So this is a very good thing for investors.
Why do you see this type of thing, scamming? You see financial fraud, especially with the elderly. Why do you think you see it so often?
It's a difficult question to answer. I mean, we can speculate, and I think that, frankly, one of the reasons it's so difficult to stamp out is because at what point does an investment recommendation cross the line between being, maybe a little higher cost than it should be and being downright malicious? It's very difficult to determine where you draw that line. And financial advisors, frankly, are mostly salespeople more than anything. And so when their livelihood is driven by selling a financial services product, it is very, very difficult to systematically not be swayed by the undue influences that are present in that industry to influence them to sell a perhaps higher cost product that compensates them more. And that's one of the structural elements in this industry that we've really focused on trying to eliminate, at least improve materially.
Do you see a day where that gets any better?
Well, I do. I mean, the day that it gets better are when investors don't just check out and hand their money to an investment advisor and just hope for the best. As President Reagan said, trust but verify. Well, once investors actually are given the information they need to, in fact, verify that they're getting good advice at a fair price, that's the day when we have a chance to have a much cleaner financial advice industry in this country.
Audie Apple, financial strategist, co-founder of GuardVest, GuardVest.com. Hey, thank you, Audie, for joining us today. We appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
Have a great day.